What's happening with you? How's lockdown been?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I think it's
Mm.
been ups and downs, you know. Like I think when
Yeah,
it started,
yeah.
I was like, oh, this is probably gonna be a month. And then
And little did you know that it's 100 days so far.
like,
So let's get into the the conversation. So what we're trying to find out from you today is how the industry has been impacted by COVID-19, just to highlight different aspects of filmmaking and what goes into that. And also just to shed some light on what you do at Ntintili Factory with your productions and you as a screenwriter, screenplay writer, and a director. So my first question is, where did it all begin?
so it was tough. So I started actually via like because I was a writer, I've been writing since I was a kid.
Yeah.
In doing short stories, and then in high school and then varsity, I did plays. I wrote plays and performed and was a dancer back in the day, and sang. So I did the whole gamut of sort
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
performance as a young person. So I knew this is what I wanted to do, but writing came naturally to me. So I ended up starting out in advertising as a copywriter.
Okay.
I was out of varsity. I needed a job, and I was like, let's go.
Mm.
And it wasn't like the glamorous advertising one you see. It was more like, it wasn't like doing like award-winning commercials. It was more like writing copy for like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
brochures and those mailers you get in the post, like those kinds of things. So, but it was good. It was my first job. But after a few years, I was like, I can't do this. I think I was there for like 2 or 3 years. I was like, I can't. I'm not going to survive. And
Mm.
around about that time, they were having auditions. Well, they were having an open call for the first Big Brother, South Africa, and they were looking for young people to come and work on the
Oh,
crew. And I was like, you know what? I'm going for it, you know. And I had just quit my job like a month earlier. And my parents thought I was crazy. Like, why are you
yeah,
quitting
yeah,
your
yeah.
job? You can't do this anymore. I can't write about Omo soap or whatever. So I went for those, those open interviews for Big Brother. I was broke, just scraped together the last
Mm.
bit of change to get on a taxi. And they had a few like series of interviews, and then I got the job. And basically it was, and from there,
Oh,
and that job, I met a lot of people who later became my friends in the industry and colleagues. But we were all
yeah,
young, we were
yeah.
all in like our early 20s, and we were working, reality TV. It's very you work 24 hours, so they have shifts because you have to watch the people in the Big Brother house. So we would be
Mm.
working in the control room, basically logging what the people say, and trying to figure out what potential storylines might come out of the house.
Okay,
So if we saw
okay.
someone flirting with a contestant, we'd have to say, oh, so and so is flirting with so and so. I think he might like it. Blah blah blah. So that the producers would be able to start to build storylines out of the show.
Around that, yeah,
So
yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, so that was my job, sitting in that dungeon like at midnight. And just sometimes during the day it was more fun, but at night you'd just be watching them sleeping, and that's pretty
Yeah,
much it. Or taking a shower or whatever. But it was great because for me, I was so excited just to have a foot in the door, you know.
mm, mm.
And that production company was Endemol Productions, and they were the same company that produced the Sadingo. And
Oh,
so I was like, listen, I'm in the door. There's no way I'm gonna not, market myself.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
I made sure to make an impression. And I said, guys, I'm like the best writer you've ever seen. When you're young, you're very confident and cocky.
Yeah,
And
very,
they're like,
very
oh,
cocky and
cool.
arrogant, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which, is helpful, I think.
Mm.
Youth has its benefits. I think we
Yeah,
sometimes
for
lose
sure.
that confidence as we get older. But yeah, I was just like, you'd be foolish not to hire me type thing. And
Yeah.
they told me to write a test script. I wrote a test script, and then the head writer was like, "Can I meet you for lunch?" And I met her for lunch in Rosebank, and I was like, "Wow, okay." And she's like, "I really love your writing. I'd like for you to join the team." And we're looking for someone like an in-house writer as well. So we think, you know, you've got what it takes. And literally, that's how I got into writing for television.
Wow. So you worked on this doing for how long?
I was there for I think like 4 years. I think, yeah, around about 4 years. And then, yeah, and while I was there, then I started doing other shows, you know, and in this industry, like you freelance a lot. So there's no like sort of job security. So I was quite hungry, like, you know, I learned I loved that my first job was in soapies, because I think most young writers would benefit from working like in a long running show, like a telenovela and a soap, because you learn the business, discipline of having to produce a script like every week, and you know, it's just a machine, you know. And because I was a resident writer, I got to, you know, really get involved in the behind the scenes. So I was storylining, I was writing scripts, and I was, you know, sort of the resident writer when changes needed to be made last minute. I would be the person who did that. So yeah, I did that for a while, but then started to get, you know, get other contacts and things, and people start to, and at the time there weren't a lot of young Black writers working in TV drama. So, you know, my name would kind of stand out on the credits, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And people I would meet, they say, oh, like you're like one of the only Black names I see when I look at the credits, you know. So it was a thing of pride, I guess, for people, but I think that also helped to sort of get me noticed more.
Yeah, for sure.
So then, yeah, so I got to do some other drama series while I was at Isidingo. And then eventually I realized it's time to move on. And around about that time, I had started my own production company with a couple of friends, and we pitched a mini series to SABC called Noah's Ark, and they commissioned it. And so I realized, yeah, no, it's time. It's time. Like, you know, if you don't keep challenging yourself, I think you get stale.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I left Isidingo around that time after about 4 years, and did this mini series, which was my first like independent project as a producer. And then around about that time, I was doing Josie H, which was a Canadian South African production, and Fundi Vundla was involved with. He was the South African producer on that show. And so around about that time, I think there was some, this is a story he told me, but he said, he called me into his office and he said, listen, I'm getting a lot of complaints. People are saying that Generations needs a blackhead writer. And on the, like on social media, he said a couple of people kept saying, go hire that Busisiwe Ntintili girl. She can fix your show. So he was like, I have to listen to the fans. So, you know, I was joking, but I mean, obviously he had seen my work on Josie H. And then he offered me the job to be head writer for Generations. And I'm not, someone said I was the first Black head writer. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. But it was pretty big. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty big at the time, yeah.
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean,
sorry to cut you. So my next question was going to be, you obviously wrote like a lot of TV stuff for a while, right? And that's a different format to like a film, right? Or like a feature film, for instance. So how was that change for you? How was that change seamless, or was that transition seamless for you, or was there a hurdle going into that?
Between writing for television and for film. I mean, for me, it's definitely a different, it's a different format completely. And I think, you know, I think writing for soapies for a long time, soapies are more sort of on the nose, like the way you write for soapy, because it's melodrama, you know, so there's not a lot of nuance. So people usually say what they mean and are very direct about their emotions and soapies. But then when I started to move into drama, I remember in the early days, you know, some of my script editors would say, you know, you're writing too much like a soapy. You know, in drama, first of all, the characters don't have to tell all of their emotions to each other. And also, drama is more about seeing and not telling. So it's more about how do you get an emotion across without having to use dialogue, without saying it, you know, how do you show it through action? How do you show it through mood and through the tone of a scene and sometimes through music, you know? So it took a bit of transition going from being more direct, which is kind of how like theater is as well, because theater, you don't have all the audio visual, so you have to say everything, you know?
Yeah.
So going from that to drama, which is much more subtle, was I think a bigger transition, you know? But once I got the hang of it, I actually found drama to be really like a beautiful format to work in. And it's my first love is drama. And then when it comes to the film side, you know, films, you know, the TV shows you're used to doing it. We do like a series. Sometimes we develop it in 3 months.
Yeah.
The whole thing, you know, because we don't get a lot of time in South Africa.
Oh.
So we'll like write, develop the whole thing in 3 months. It's shot in a month, you know, usually that's the case. But with my first film that I did, which was Heartlines, and it was part of a series of films, and I wrote a teen standalone film out of that. I think that took about 2 years to develop, you know, and then with Happiness as well, it was like 2.5 years, I think, to develop. So you have to learn, and in writing, you write a draft, it gets sent to like a gazillion producers, because there's different people who put money into the film. So each of them wants to read it, you know, and so they each have their input, and so it takes way, way longer to write in terms of like getting the complete project. So I had to learn patience, you know, and then also you have to still be excited about the story, because you might write it and then leave it, go on to do something else, and then a few months later you have to come back and do a new draft. So you have to find a way to keep the passion for the story going for like a long period of time.
A long time, yeah. So I'm glad that you mentioned the drama aspect of script writing, right? So I want to take it to now, to COVID-19. You know, the restrictions are here. Government is saying that we can't do certain things, which also affect the art of filmmaking, right? So things like kissing, people can't kiss on screen anymore. So those kind of things, how do those affect you as a storyteller and as a scriptwriter, and how have you sort of worked around those regulations and restrictions?
Look, we've had to really sort of reconsider how we do everything. And I think we took it for granted, you know, like the world before COVID, we took a lot of things for granted. So yeah, it's affected things like, you know, I'm working on a project right now, and it's a dance project. So obviously there's a lot of, it's JIVA, yes, it's called JIVA. And there's a lot of sweat and people touching each other, and you know, like, so you can't exactly get away from it. And also we had like, you know, big scenes with like 100 dancers, you know, like in a venue. So we were filming already earlier in the year, and then we had to stop because of COVID. And now that we're getting ready to go back to resume filming, we've had to consider, okay, some of those big crowd scenes, is there a way to achieve them in a different way that's still creative, you know, but without having to see 200, 300 people? So that's one thing, is the crowd control. We just simply can't do it. And also in South Africa, there's restrictions about how many people can be on set. So we're working around that kind of stuff. And then the kissing stuff, you know, at the end of the day, you don't want to compromise your story. So I know there's other more conservative shows. I mean, Muvhango, they don't kiss at all. I don't think so they're fine. But I mean, you know, our show is youthful and it's young and urban and hip, and so, you know, we can't really be so conservative like Muvhango. So we just have to see, how do we push things back? How do we make sure, first of all, that people are safe? But then, like, we shoot what we can shoot now, and then things that maybe have to be left till later, we can shoot later. So we're working around that stuff.
Okay, cool. And also as someone that is in the industry and you see all these things happening, what do you anticipate happening in the film industry going forward? Let's say COVID-19 lasts for another 5 years, right? And that changes the industry completely. So what is your forecast on that? What do you anticipate happening in the industry to counter the whole COVID-19 situation?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm very plugged into what's happening like here in South Africa and
Yeah,
then on the continent and globally, because you have to sort of stay in touch with what's going on.
yeah, for sure.
And I think like globally it's affected us all in the industry. And I think sort of those days of I know a lot, like overseas, for instance, a lot of studios are looking at instead of doing location shoots, which have to take people, on planes, one, which is not exactly safe, and to
Yeah,
faraway
yeah,
locations. A lot of production companies are looking at building stuff in a studio. So you know, building the entire world of their story in a studio. So those are things that we're also looking at to say, how do we in the future, with future projects, and even with this one, how do we take things that we might have shot outside and bring them inside? Because then it's controlled, and then you can control who comes in and comes out, and you can test and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the big things. I think there'll probably be less extravagant location shoots for a
yeah,
while. And then I think also we're investigating things like virtual reality. Before it was something that was too expensive for South Africans to have. Like we always watch these Hollywood movies with this amazing CGI, or they've got these background virtual reality, and you would think that they're standing on a pyramid in Egypt, but actually they're not. They're in a studio,
yeah,
and that stuff was shot, and then it's superimposed. So I think virtual VR is just done groundbreaking things for the industry. And it's finally come to South Africa, which is amazing, because before we just didn't have the money to compete with the big blockbuster Hollywood stuff. But now we have companies that are in South Africa who are doing that kind of work. So I feel like the future, as well as South African filmmakers, we have an opportunity to also tap into those kind of special effects, and create really 3D worlds, but inside of a studio.
Okay, cool. So now this also changes the premiering kind of culture, right? It changes the red carpet
Yeah,
situation. It changes the whole thing. So what does that also mean? I mean, I think that's also an important part of like the marketing of the film and
yeah,
the awareness, creating awareness around it. So like, how
yeah.
is that going to change locally, especially?
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's a tough one, because I mean that also
Mm,
goes into like the world of like live entertainment, which has been so hard hit, you know. And I know like even like my friends who work in live entertainment, they're now starting to look into doing digital concerts and those kinds of things. But yeah, with us, the premiere is really, really important, and it's a great hype for a show or for a movie. But I think for now we're gonna probably have to do things digitally. I mean, we don't have a release date for our show, but the previous Netflix show that came out of South Africa was Blood and Water, which is the second
mm,
Netflix original. The first one, Queen Sono, came pre-COVID, and and it had a big launch, and it was great and amazing. And then the whole world shut down, and then Blood and Water was supposed to come out.
mm.
And I thought, oh man, that sucks for. And I know the producer, she's a friend of mine. I'm like,
Yeah,
that sucks, because imagine now you're the second one and you're so excited about your show, and then you can't even have a premiere. But Netflix was amazing how they basically took the premiere and made it digital.
mm,
And they just created so many like cool, interesting interviews with cast, and like the hype was still there. It was just on
mm.
social. And I
Yeah,
feel like young
yeah,
people
yeah.
live on social anyway, you know?
Yeah, for sure,
And
for sure.
and these premieres, usually they just invite like the few who's who. There's not, but this one was amazing because it really truly was a premiere for everyone.
Mm.
And so even the first episode, they showed it on YouTube for free. So in a way, it actually, I think, helped. It helped because it suddenly wasn't like this elite thing where you have to get invited to. It was like
Mm.
everyone was invited to the premiere. And obviously, Blood and Water did amazing.
Yeah.
It's just topped the charts in every country. So I think that's probably sort of going to be the future for how the next year or so, at least.
Yeah. COVID-19 is getting rid of elitism. Yeah,
Yeah, which
so
is good. I think there's some good things. There's some good byproducts of it, eh?
yeah, like I was actually about to ask, so how do you actually feel about the whole situation? Do you think it's a good time for the industry to reset? Do you think there's anything to reset? And yeah, just what do you feel?
So in terms of resetting,
So like with COVID-19 hitting, everything has stopped, right? And everyone has been forced to reconsider how they do things. So, do you think this was a
mm,
good time for the industry to reset, considering how
oh yeah,
small and how young the industry in South Africa is?
yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, look, the film industry, look, funny enough, like we have one of the oldest film industries in the world, which a lot of people don't realize. I think that one of the first films was actually made in South Africa,
Wow,
like a
I
gazillion
didn't
years
know
ago.
that.
Yeah,
I didn't
like a
know
lot of
that.
people don't know this. I think one of the first films, if not the first film, was made in South Africa. Um, and that was obviously during the times of colonialism, so it was made by a white person. But whatever, it's still it's still what it is. But so what I'm trying to say is, though, we do have a history of it. We do have a history of film and TV in this country. TV came to us late, but we've caught up. But I think what's happened is, before COVID, there was a lot of talk in the past few years about transformation in the industry. First, it was about transforming a very white television and film industry in South Africa, and that was kind of in my day when I was coming up. It was very, very white. Most of the production companies were white because obviously it was, some of the
Yeah,
byproduct of apartheid. And the talk then was about transforming and making the industry blacker, to be quite frank with you, and getting black writers in, getting black producers, and broadcasters were very adamant about that. That people have to share the pie. Like people can't just have a monopoly on the industry. So we did get that. We did start to get more black producers, more black writers. But then now, of recent times, now the conversation has been around talent specifically, and transforming the industry in terms of opening it up. Because what happened was a lot of fresh talent came in, and then this whole age of social media um, came about, and then instead of looking for actors, a lot of broadcasters started wanting to get people who had a lot of Twitter followers or a lot of
wow.
Instagram followers,
Mm.
um, and and it became a thing as a producer if you're going to pitch, because ultimately broadcasters have a right to, they
Yeah.
can veto and tell you who to hire at the end of the day. So it would be like, oh, this person is great, but how many Twitter followers do they have?
Mm.
So I think for a lot of actors who maybe have studied for it and stuff, for them, they felt like, one, you can't have the same faces over and over again, the same five faces on every show on television. And also we need to really go back to the craft of acting and the craft of what we
Yeah.
do. So that conversation has been happening. So I think post-COVID, I think it's a real opportunity for us to maybe like really break some of these bad habits that we've developed in
Yeah.
recent years, and really open up for new talent to come in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I think also, young kids there's also young people who may not have expensive cameras and big budgets to make their own films, but they have cell phones, and they have, you can make an entire movie with a cell phone.
Yeah, for
So I think
sure,
there's
for sure.
opportunities for that kind of innovation as well. So I think it's exciting times. You know, it's unfortunate how it came about, but sometimes the most inventive things happen out of adversity.
Yeah, yeah, for
So
sure.
it'll
That's
be
very
interesting.
true. That's very true.
Mm.
So going back to your Netflix partnership and you working with Netflix, how has that been for you? Especially producing JIVA now, and yeah, just like the infiltration of Netflix in Africa. What does that mean for like young aspiring filmmakers and also the industry that exists right now in South Africa? I know that's a loaded question. I'm sorry, but I just had to get everything out the way.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a big question. I mean, look, I think everyone who, you know, it's like you with your thing, you want your platform to reach as many people as possible, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you want it to grow. So I think that's like, it's the same with any creative, you know, you want to get as big an audience as you possibly can. And I think platforms like Netflix are just amazing in terms of like opening the door to where before you would only maybe reach, you know, a couple million in your own country, but now you have the potential to reach,
Like a
you
lot
know,
more.
hundreds of millions around the world globally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an amazing platform. And it took a while for them to get here, but I think they were also testing waters, you know, and seeing would there be a market for it, and clearly there is, you know. I think
Definitely.
Africans always support, you know, we want to see ourselves on screen, and also there's Africans who live all over the world. But the thing that I think surprised everyone was how that it's not just African people who want to watch African content. It's people of all cultures, you know, and of all races and of all, you know, demographics. Like they're really interested in seeing because they haven't gotten exposed to it, you know. So they're really curious, how do people in Africa live, you know, how do modern
Yeah.
people, you know, how do they dress, what do they do, like that kind of stuff. So I
They
think for
feel them
them
as
it's
Wakanda.
exciting. Yeah, you know, for Wakanda was all they had. So we're like, no, we'll show you the real thing.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
exciting, and I think it's just, you know, it's early days, and already they're quite. I know Netflix is very is looking for more content and looking to engage with more African creatives. So I think it's gonna explode. I think it's just gonna grow and grow and grow, and hopefully spread to other platforms as well.
Okay. Cool. So I just want to find out more about Jiva. So what is the story there? I mean, I know the story personally, but I just want you to explain to whoever's going to be watching this, and just let them know what Jiva is about.
Okay. Look, I can't give a lot away because it's still early
Mm.
days, but I'll just say, you know, the name says it all. It's a drama series about dance. And it's something, you know, that young people really are at the forefront of in South Africa and really in the world. But it's about this young girl who's from Durban. You know, she's 25 years old, and she's been dancing since she could walk, and she loves it, and she loves street dance. But she's working at a dead-end job, trying to support her family. And this street dance competition comes to Durban. And for her, it's like Ilascaro. It's her last chance to follow her dreams. And if she doesn't do this, she might end up, you know, working that dead end job for the rest of her life. So she decides to take a chance, and she enters the competition. But the only problem is she doesn't have a dance crew. So she has to scramble and put together this dance crew. And she decides, you know, that she wants to have all girls because girl power, you know.
Yeah.
And also partly because to stick it to her ex-boyfriend who is also in the competition, and who kind of dumped her and moved to Joburg. So it's partly revenge, partly following her dreams. So we kind of follow her on this journey, and as she forms this crew, and they're kind of the underdogs in the competition, you know. And it's really about it's I think it's a story for anyone who really has a dream. It might not be dancing or anything creative, but I mean, you
Yeah,
know, we
yeah.
all have dreams. Sometimes we're afraid to go for them. So I think like it's a really uplifting, feel good story about really chasing your dreams, and taking a chance on yourself.
Dope. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's all I have for you now. But thank you so much for doing this live with me. It
Oh,
was
no,
a dope
thank you.
conversation. I'm an
No,
aspiring
thanks so
filmmaker
much.
myself, so it was very inspiring to have a conversation with you. So thank you so much,
Oh,
and
that's great.
congratulations on JIVA. I mean, it's a very big
Thank you.
opportunity for South Africa and for you yourself. So
Yeah.
onwards and upwards with that. So yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you. So
Thank
when
you.
am I gonna see your stuff? The world also.
Soon,
When are you
soon,
gonna? Okay, that's
soon.
good.
Yeah, soon, very soon. Thank you so much, Busi.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank you. Hey.
greet the family for me, please. Greet the family
Okay,
for
no,
me.
will do. Okay, sharp.
Cool.
All right, cheers,
Peace.
man.